Shocking news. Years later, husband admits to finding something strange in a ditch. Today, we delve into a harrowing case. If you're eager to support my channel, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Consider what you truly understand about abusive relationships, especially if your background involves a peaceful household where disputes were rare. Often, our grasp on such matters stems from online articles or chats with friends and colleagues. However, abuse transcends the superficial. It's fundamentally about control and imposing restrictions on another person. In this episode, we're unpacking a particularly severe form of abuse, the restriction of personal freedom. Abusers typically feel they have the right to dictate every facet of their partner's life. Their social interactions, friendships, attire, whereabouts, and even their daily schedule. Imagine how oppressive that must feel. Yet what's even more alarming is that abusers perceive their behavior as benevolent. In their distorted view, they believe they are granting freedom by permitting activities that, in any healthy relationship, would be non-negotiable. Our focus today centers on a woman who rebelled against such draconian rules, a decision that tragically cost her life. Let's explore whether this was indeed a case of domestic abuse, or if there was an overzealous public rush to label the husband as the villain following his wife's murder. Set in Cary, North Carolina, a poster child for suburban tranquility, where residents often leave their cars and homes unlocked due to the virtually non-existent crime rate. This town boasts racial harmony, exemplary schools, and neighborly warmth. It was here that Brad and Nancy Cooper decided to raise their family and carve out an idyllic existence. Brad, a sharp and successful IT engineer, and Nancy, an ex-competitive runner who was vibrant, attractive, and devoted to their two young daughters, epitomized the outward ideal of a serene family life. However, beneath this facade of normalcy, tensions brewed. On July 12, 2008, Nancy embarked on her routine morning jog, a jog from which she would never return. The subsequent events are as disturbing as they are complex. This story leaves us grappling with the depths of tragedy as it stripped Nancy and Brad's families of peace, leaving them clinging to the faint hope of justice. That fateful afternoon, a distressed call from Jessica Adam to emergency services marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. Her friend Nancy Cooper was missing. Jessica's voice trembled as she reported that Nancy had set out for her morning run at 7 a.m., but never returned. They had planned to meet later, but Nancy was nowhere to be found. Attempts to reach her were futile. Neither her cell phone nor her home phone yielded any response. Complicating matters, Brad was at work and initially dismissed his wife's absence, thinking she might have extended her walk. As the hours turned into evening with no sign of Nancy, the anxiety escalated. This incident prompts us to delve into the Cooper family's past, which might shed light on this mystery. The family's roots trace back to the 1960s when Harry Renz, a University of British Columbia graduate, married Donna Audrey. Settling in Edmonton, they nurtured a warm, nurturing home for their 4 children: Jeff, Krista, Jill, and Nancy. In 1988, Harry and Donna ventured into entrepreneurship with an employment agency in Alberta, offering life management and job training services. Born on October 25, 1973, Nancy was an identical twin to her sister Krista. Her life took a pivotal turn in Calgary, 1998, when she met Brad Cooper. At 24, Nancy's striking presence, tall with dark hair, immediately captivated Brad, but it was more than physical attraction that drew them together. Brad's calm, solid demeanor portrayed him as dependable, a true anchor. Their connection was instant and deep, with both quickly falling in love. Nancy, equally alluring with her tall, blonde figure and understated charisma, captured Brad's heart. Their whirlwind romance escalated when Brad received a lucrative job offer from Cisco Systems in Raleigh, North Carolina. Seizing the opportunity, he wished for Nancy to join him in this new chapter. To streamline their move to the U.S. and to solidify their commitment, Brad and Nancy married in the fall of 2000. While it might appear that the marriage was primarily for immigration purposes, allowing Nancy to accompany Brad, the couple had already planned to wed in the fall of 2002. Once settled in North Carolina, Brad began to carve out his professional path at one of the premier firms in the U.S., while Nancy assumed the role of a stay-at-home mom, a situation more by circumstance than choice. At Cisco Systems, Brad excelled as a specialist in integrating internet technologies with telephony, working as a VoIP engineer and architect. He was among a select group of 152 experts in this niche of networking technology, propelling him to substantial career heights. The Coopers enjoyed a comfortable life, with each owning a BMW, yet Nancy's situation was less than ideal. As a Canadian in the U.S. without a work permit, her activities were legally constrained. She could reside there but not engage in formal employment. The couple welcomed two daughters, Bella in 2004 and Katie in 2006. Neighbors described Nancy as a devoted mother, often seen engaging actively with her children at local playgrounds. Despite her loving involvement at home, Nancy felt the pinch of not having a professional identity. She longed for a career beyond her roles as a wife and mother, but without the necessary U.S. work authorization, her options were severely limited. Turning our focus to Brad, he was a native of Medicine Hat, Alberta, born in the early 1970s. After completing high school, he pursued a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at the University of Calgary. His initial post-graduation role was with TransCanada Pipelines as a network engineer. In 1998, his life took a significant turn when he met Nancy Renz. Their connection was immediate, and Brad not only grew close to Nancy, but also became an integral part of her family. He impressed her relatives with his technical prowess, often assisting with computer issues and participating enthusiastically in family gatherings. His skills and expertise eventually led to the pivotal job offer from Cisco Systems in Raleigh, an opportunity that set the stage for their future. In 2005, Brad pursued an MBA at North Carolina State University's College of Management, specializing in product innovation. His career was flourishing, continually enhanced by his expanding skill set. Meanwhile, Nancy's own aspirations dimmed as she increasingly lived in his shadow, having to forfeit her personal ambitions and professional identity. Nancy, a former competitive runner with Olympic aspirations, had her dreams curtailed by a knee injury. Nonetheless, she remained active in the running community, participating in marathons and fostering new relationships within the group, much to the chagrin of the more reserved Brad. Over time, their relationship began to fray. Friends of the couple noted early signs of strain, though Nancy chose to maintain a public facade of marital bliss, often idealizing Brad despite the underlying tensions. As Brad ascended in his career, he became increasingly domineering and manipulative towards Nancy. He dismissed her as a mundane housewife, lost in the mundanity of domestic life. The situation escalated when Nancy discovered Brad's infidelity with her close friend Heather in spring 2007. Brad initially denied the allegations but eventually confessed on New Year's Eve, downplaying the betrayal by claiming it was a one-time indiscretion. Despite Brad's minimization, the damage was profound. The couple sought to salvage their relationship through couples therapy, where Brad confessed that his affair had been ongoing. Faced with this revelation, they resolved to divorce and sell their home, with Nancy intending to return to Canada with their daughters. However, Brad refused to relinquish custody or permit the girls to leave the U.S. in a vindictive move. He canceled Nancy's credit cards, effectively trapping her in a foreign country without financial resources. Now, as we revisit the circumstances of Nancy's disappearance, we must consider these fraught dynamics that painted a troubling picture of their final days together. The revelation of Nancy and Brad Cooper's tumultuous marriage cast immediate suspicion on Brad when Nancy mysteriously disappeared. Concern escalated quickly among her friends and her parents, Harry and Donna Renz, who were devastated by the news. They promptly arranged to travel to Cary, hoping to aid in the search for their daughter. As the day turned into evening without any sign of Nancy, the local police visited the Coopers' residence to question Brad. He explained that Nancy had risen early on Saturday for a run, a change in her routine that included forgoing her cell phone and keys. Contrary to her usual habit of driving to meet her running partner at a coffee shop, he claimed she opted for a different route that morning, not running on her familiar trails. This deviation raised eyebrows among the officers, particularly since Brad was the last person reported to have seen her that day. The absence of witnesses to corroborate Brad's narrative of her departure that morning deepened the mystery. The police were puzzled. There were no sightings of Nancy after she reportedly left her house at 7 a.m. The last confirmed sighting was on Friday night at a friend's gathering across the street. Brad maintained she had plans to meet her regular running partner later that Saturday, but this did not align with the lack of witness accounts. A community search effort was mobilized to locate the missing runner. Speculations about her possibly fleeing from her marital issues surfaced, yet those who knew her insisted she would never leave her children behind. After days of frantic searching, a grim discovery was made. Nancy Cooper's body was found 3 miles from her home, off her usual running path, in a drainage ditch by a man walking his dog. She was found face down in a stormwater drain, dressed only in a sports bra, with a single diamond earring in one ear. The autopsy confirmed strangulation as the cause of death, evidenced by a broken hyoid bone. There were no signs of sexual assault or other injuries, focusing the investigation on uncovering a motive behind her murder. Following the discovery of Nancy's body, suspicion swiftly converged on Brad, making him the prime suspect. Cary investigators soon classified her death as a homicide. During their search of the Coopers' home, police confiscated several items, including Nancy's phone and keys, which, according to her friends, she typically carried with her. On the day Nancy was reported missing, officers interviewing Brad noted small red marks and scratches on the back of his neck. These observations were documented in the police report, though they were not immediately explained. Crucially, no one besides Brad had reported seeing Nancy after she attended a neighborhood party alone on Friday night. While a friend confirmed speaking to her by phone around 10:30 p.m. that night, there were no further sightings of her. As the investigation intensified, detectives quickly zeroed in on Brad, especially given that their relationship dynamics had captured significant attention. In many homicide cases, the spouse is often scrutinized first to either confirm or rule out their involvement before considering other suspects. The evidence accumulated led to the issuance of overnight warrants to search the Coopers' residence, their vehicles, and Brad himself. The police conducted thorough searches, treating the home and cars as potential crime scenes. They applied luminol to detect any traces of blood and meticulously searched for other forms of evidence. Additionally, they collected Brad's hair, fingerprints, and DNA to compare with any forensic findings from where Nancy's body was discovered. Investigators also plan to examine and document any physical injuries such as cuts or scratches on Brad, which might relate to the crime. Given that the Coopers were a married couple sharing a home and often a car, it was essential to distinguish any evidence linked to the crime from that which could be attributed to their regular domestic interactions. As the investigation into Nancy Cooper's disappearance deepened, several peculiar details emerged that raised questions. On the morning of the day Nancy went missing, Brad was found to be engaged in unusually thorough house cleaning activities, including laundry, vacuuming, and mopping the floors. Notably, he had purchased bleach and other cleaning supplies the day prior, which police found suspicious given the timing coinciding with his wife's disappearance. While there was no direct evidence linking the purchase of bleach to any nefarious purpose, the police collected several boxes and bags of items from the Cooper home as potential evidence to be analyzed for any connection to Nancy's death. This extensive cleaning raised inconsistencies when compared to descriptions of Brad's typical behavior provided by acquaintances familiar with the couple's domestic life, as noted in police testimony. Furthermore, it was reported that Brad had cleaned the trunk of Nancy's car, but not the interior, which he explained by claiming a gasoline spill. However, the police did not detect any residual odors of gasoline or cleaning agents, casting doubt on his explanation. Around the time of Nancy's death, the couple, both Canadian citizens, were amidst a separation, with Nancy planning to return to Canada with their children. In a significant move in April 2008, Brad withdrew Nancy's access to their joint bank accounts and credit cards and seized the children's passports, effectively preventing her from leaving the country. Investigators also scrutinized Brad's computer for any incriminating material that might suggest ways to commit murder or dispose of a body. During the trial, Detective Adam Dismukes highlighted that certain areas of the home, particularly the front hallway, indicated signs of a possible altercation upon Nancy's return from the neighbor's party. This assertion was based on an analysis of numerous photos taken during the initial missing person investigation. Brad's attorney, Howard Kurtz, contested these findings in court, arguing that the photographic evidence did not conclusively point to Brad's involvement in any crime. Notably, discrepancies in household items, such as decorative ducks and bamboo sticks that were positioned differently or missing in subsequent photographs, suggested to investigators that some disturbance might have occurred in those areas. Howard Kurtz, Brad Cooper's defense attorney, challenged the interpretation of the evidence, particularly focusing on the lack of disturbance to various items within the home. He highlighted that items like a lamp in the hallway remained undisturbed and pointed out the absence of scuff marks on the floor. Moreover, he noted that certain possessions, such as a glass coffee table and a lamp in the living room, as well as a computer in the home office, also appeared untouched, which could suggest a lack of struggle or altercation in those areas. During a subsequent interview, Brad expressed his belief that the investigators had prematurely pegged him as a suspect during the initial searches of their home. This sentiment was echoed in the accusations leveled against him. Detective Adam Dismukes asserted, based on the gathered evidence, that Brad had strangled Nancy in their Cary home and disposed of her body a few miles away. Dismukes claimed, "I believe Nancy Cooper came home early on the morning of July 12th, and Mr. Cooper killed her." In October 2008, 3 months following the discovery of Nancy's body, 37-year-old Brad Cooper was arrested. However, his trial did not commence until March 2011, over 2 years later. Throughout the 36-day trial, both prosecution and defense laid out their narratives before the jury. Despite Brad's assertions of innocence, the jury convicted him of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life in prison. The prosecution painted a picture of Brad as someone who had been unfaithful and increasingly domineering and abusive toward Nancy. They argued that his motive for murder was to eliminate her, allowing him to continue his extramarital affair uninterrupted. This portrayal was bolstered by evidence of Brad severing Nancy's access to their joint financial resources as she planned to return to Canada with their children. A pivotal moment in the trial came with the testimony of 2 FBI agents who revealed internet searches on Brad's laptop that included maps pinpointing the area where Nancy's body was eventually found. According to jury foreman Andy Gilbert, this specific testimony shifted the jury's perspective, lending weight to the circumstantial evidence and significantly impacting their deliberations. Gilbert noted, "The evidence presented by Special Agents Gregory Johnson and Chris Chappell influenced the outcome of the case. It made a lot of the other circumstantial evidence more relevant and credible." The trial highlighted that while Brad had initially consented to a divorce and the division of assets, his stance hardened upon realizing the financial implications, further complicating the narrative of their deteriorating relationship. The defense team argued that Brad Cooper's financial maneuvers were a protective response to impending financial ruin, not malicious intent. They also suggested that his reluctance to allow the children to move to Canada stemmed from a desire to maintain close proximity to them. In 2011, Brad pled not guilty, but was ultimately convicted after the jury deliberated for approximately 10 hours over 3 days, leading to his life sentence without parole on May 5th, following what became the longest non-death penalty murder trial in Wake County history. During the trial, nearly 100 witnesses were called over 36 days as the prosecution endeavored to depict Brad as a man overwhelmed by anger and frustration who meticulously planned and executed his wife's murder in the early hours of July 12, 2008. Following the conviction, Nancy's parents filed a legal petition accusing Brad of having an affair, verbally abusing Nancy, and exhibiting emotional instability, posing a threat to their children. Court records disclosed Brad's history of suicide attempts, both as a teenager and more recently in the winter prior to the trial. In 2013, Brad appealed for a retrial, and while awaiting this, he entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder, resulting in a 12 to 15-year sentence that accounted for time already served. Concurrently, he engaged in a custody battle over his daughters against Nancy's family. His guilty plea, however, resulted in the forfeiture of his parental rights, allowing Nancy's twin sister to gain custody of the children. The defense maintained that significant evidence had been overlooked or improperly handled, including allegations that Brad's laptop, critical to the prosecution's case, had been tampered with. They contended that the police had neglected other potential leads, fixating instead on Brad as the sole suspect. This case leaves the public and legal observers divided. Was Brad Cooper a victim of circumstantial evidence and judicial oversight, or was he a master manipulator who used his personal turmoil as leverage in his interpersonal conflicts? His history of suicidal behavior, used by the prosecution to suggest a manipulative streak, adds a complex layer to the narrative, posing questions about his psychological state and its impact on his actions and the legal proceedings. Throughout the legal proceedings, Bradley Cooper consistently asserted his innocence. However, in a stunning turn of events in 2015, he confessed to the murder of his wife Nancy, revealing during a courtroom hearing that he had strangled her during an argument and subsequently disposed of her body in a drainage ditch. At the age of 40, in Wake County Superior Court, Brad pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, amending his earlier plea of not guilty to the first-degree murder charge he was convicted of in 2011. This conviction had been previously overturned by the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and Judge Paul Gessner subsequently sentenced Cooper to 12 years in prison, accounting for the 5 years already served. This plea deal significantly reduced his original sentence of life without parole following his successful appeal. In a dramatic courtroom moment, Brad confirmed his guilt when the judge questioned him directly about murdering Nancy, the mother of their 2 children, and concealing her body at a nearby construction site in Cary, North Carolina, back in 2008. This confession marked his first admission of the crime in a legal setting. Prosecutors pointed out that at the time of the murder, Brad was engaged in multiple extramarital affairs, including one with a neighbor, while Nancy was attempting to dissolve their marriage and relocate to Canada with their children. As a condition of the plea agreement, Brad also relinquished his parental rights to their daughters, allowing them to be adopted by Nancy's twin sister, Krista Lister. This decision marked the end of a long and painful chapter for Nancy's family. At the hearing, Nancy's father, Harry Renz, expressed a sense of closure, noting that from the outset of this harrowing ordeal, his primary desire was for the responsible party to come forward, admit their guilt, and acknowledge the gravity of their actions. Finally, with Brad's confession and acceptance of responsibility, this wish was fulfilled. Nancy, who was 34 years old at the time of her death, was remembered as a dedicated athlete and a loving mother of 2 young girls. She had been in a deteriorating marriage, having requested that Brad move out to allow her and the children to return to Canada, a request he vehemently denied, ultimately handling the situation in the most tragic way possible. After completing his reduced 12-year sentence, Bradley Graham Cooper was released from the Mountain View Correctional Institution in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, on November 23, 2020, bringing to a close a case that had captured the attention and emotions of many over the years. Upon his release, Bradley Cooper was immediately detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to initiate the deportation process back to Canada. Currently, he resides in Canada and is legally prohibited from contacting his daughters. Choosing to maintain a low profile, he avoids public attention. Individuals in situations similar to Brad Cooper's can benefit significantly from learning how to authentically meet their relationship needs, embracing honest communication, compromise, and active listening. Establishing connections where both parties feel heard and understood is challenging, but ultimately more fulfilling than resorting to manipulation. This approach not only fosters closeness and self-awareness, but also liberates one from the burdensome loneliness that often accompanies manipulative behaviors. Nancy's tragic end underscores the severe consequences of domestic violence. For anyone currently in a challenging relationship, it is crucial to seek help and not endure in silence. Support and resources are available, and taking the step to reach out can be the beginning of a journey towards safety and healing.